Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into something really interesting.
Yeah.
We've been getting a lot of listener questions and research about companies that are bringing exercise and fitness right into the workday.
Right.
Some people think it's a
Mm.
productivity killer,
Yeah.
and others see it as like this secret weapon
Yeah,
for a happier and healthier team.
absolutely. I think it's like we're kind of rethinking that old work-life balance idea, isn't it?
Totally.
It's more about like weaving those two worlds together.
Yeah, exactly. And get this, a study in Denmark found that a quarter of employees
Wow.
are offered exercise time
Really?
during work hours.
Hmm.
I mean, can you picture that?
That's a huge shift,
Yeah,
for sure. But it's interesting. What's interesting is the study also looked at why companies are making this change.
right.
It's not just about offering perks anymore, it's about strategy.
Okay, so less about ping pong tables
Hmm.
and more about a real investment in employees. So what are some of the ways that companies are doing this?
Well, it runs the gamut.
Okay.
Some companies are keeping it simple, like with desk exercises or encouraging walking breaks,
hmm
while others have gone all in with on-site gyms and like structured fitness programs. So it really depends on the company culture and the resources that they have available.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the payoff.
Yeah.
You sent over some research from Professor Lars L. Anderson
Oh, yeah.
at the Danish National Research Center for the Working Environment.
Hmm.
And his findings were pretty surprising. Apparently, exercising at work is actually more effective at reducing sick leave than exercising at home.
Yeah, that's right. It seems counterintuitive.
Right.
But the study suggests that the social element, combined with the structure and routine of a workplace program,
Yeah.
makes a big difference in people's consistency.
So you're more likely to stick with it if you're doing it with your colleagues and it's built into your workday. That's really interesting. But what about the impact on companies themselves? Like, is there evidence that this actually helps their bottom line?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
When you have fewer employees taking sick leave, it results in direct cost savings for the company.
Right.
But it goes beyond that. There's a growing body of research showing that employees who are physically and mentally fit tend to be more engaged, more productive, and even more creative.
So it's not just about fewer sick days. It's about having a workforce that's firing on all cylinders.
Exactly.
You mentioned cost savings, but what about the cost of these programs themselves?
Yeah, sure.
That has to be a concern for companies, right?
Of course, there are costs involved.
Right.
But the way I see it, it's an investment just like any other business expense.
Okay.
And when you consider the potential return on investment, the ROI as they call it,
Yeah.
it becomes a much more compelling proposition.
So break down ROI for me in this context. What does that actually look like?
Well, it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about the overall value gained. Reduced healthcare costs, increased productivity, improved morale and retention.
Yeah.
These are all factors that contribute to a positive ROI for workplace wellness programs.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you included a case study in the materials you sent an IT company in Denmark called Pico Publish.
Yeah.
They seem to be all in on this idea.
Yes, Pico Publish is a great example of a company that's fully embraced this concept.
Mm.
They actually give their employees 1 hour of paid exercise per week.
Wow, a whole hour. That's a significant chunk of time.
It is, and to put it into perspective, if they have 50 employees, that equates to over 1,600 hours of lost work time per year,
Yeah.
but they believe it's more than worth it.
Okay, so they're putting their money where their mouth is. What kind of results are they seeing?
Well, their strategic operations director, Belinda Adserbal, was quoted in one of the articles you sent.
Okay.
She said, and I quote, "Exercise boosts cognitive function, creativity, and efficiency, which are crucial for us."
So they're seeing tangible benefits in terms of their employees' performance. But what about the employees themselves? How are they feeling about this?
From what I gathered, they're loving it.
Yeah.
In fact, one employee, Rasmus Olen Buchholdt, shared his experience in an interview.
Okay.
He talked about having more energy, a better work-life balance, and even getting sick less often since the program started.
So it's almost like a win-win. The company benefits and the employees are happier and healthier.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that Pico Publish doesn't have a fancy gym or anything.
Oh,
They encourage their employees to find activities they enjoy and simply make time for it during the workday.
so it's about flexibility and giving employees the autonomy to choose what works best for them.
Precisely. And that's something that's really resonating with employees.
Yeah.
It's not about forcing them to do something they don't want to do.
Right.
It's about providing the support and the structure to help them prioritize their well-being.
That's a really important distinction. It's about empowerment, not enforcement. But I'm curious, how does this all connect back to what you're looking for? What are your goals in exploring this topic?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me in the materials you sent was this idea of creating a holistic approach to workplace wellness.
Okay.
I'm interested in understanding what that actually looks like in practice and how it can be implemented effectively.
So it's not just about offering a gym membership or a yoga class.
Right.
It's about creating a culture that truly values employee well-being.
Exactly. And that might involve things like flexible work arrangements, healthy food options in the cafeteria, or even just promoting a culture of open communication where employees feel comfortable talking about their needs and concerns.
It sounds like there's a lot to unpack here.
There is, and I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one company might not work for another.
Yeah.
It's about finding what fits best for your specific needs and culture.
That's a great point, and it leads perfectly into what I wanted to talk about next. You mentioned that Pico Publish doesn't have a gym, but they encourage employees to find activities they enjoy. What are some of the other creative ways companies are incorporating wellness into the workday?
Well, one trend that's gaining traction is the concept of micro workouts.
Okay.
Short bursts of activity that can be easily integrated into the workday.
I like that.
Things like taking the stairs instead of the elevator, doing a quick desk stretch every hour,
Yeah.
or even just standing up and walking around for a few minutes every 30 minutes.
Those are great ideas. And they're things anyone can do regardless of their fitness level or how busy their schedule is.
Exactly. It's about finding small ways to incorporate movement and mindfulness into your day, even if you can't commit to a full workout.
I love that. So it's not about being a marathon runner or a yoga master. It's about making small, sustainable changes that can have a big impact on your overall well-being.
Precisely. And one of the things that's exciting about this movement is that it's challenging traditional notions of productivity.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of focusing on how many hours people are sitting at their desks,
Right.
it's about recognizing that sometimes taking a break to move your body or clear your head can actually make you more productive in the long run.
It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Exactly. And that's something that's resonating with a lot of companies, especially in today's fast-paced, always-on work culture.
So it sounds like we're really at a turning point. This idea of workplace wellness is becoming more than just a trend. It's becoming a fundamental shift in how we think about work and well-being.
I agree, and it's an exciting time to be exploring these ideas.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something that came up in your research. The potential downsides or challenges of implementing these programs. There were a few articles that mentioned concerns about cost logistics and even employee pushback.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I think it's important to acknowledge that there can be challenges.
Sure.
Implementing these programs effectively takes careful planning,
Right.
resources, and a genuine commitment from leadership.
Right. It can't just be a half-hearted attempt.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to be mindful of employee preferences and concerns. Some people might be hesitant to participate, and that's okay.
Right.
It's not about forcing anyone to do anything they're not comfortable with.
It's about creating a culture of choice and respect where employees feel empowered to make decisions that are right for them.
Precisely. And I think the key to overcoming these challenges is communication.
Go ahead.
Companies need to be transparent about their goals and intentions with these programs and solicit feedback from employees to ensure they're meeting their needs.
So it's about creating a dialogue and finding a balance that works for everyone.
Exactly. And as with any new initiative, it's going to take some trial and error to get it right.
That makes sense. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about, one thing that really struck me in the materials you shared was this connection between workplace wellness and mental health.
Right.
It seems like companies are starting to realize that taking care of employees' mental well-being is just as important as their physical health.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I think for a long time, the focus was primarily on physical health.
Right.
Things like gym memberships and health screenings. But now there's a growing recognition that mental health is a crucial part of overall well-being, and it's something that companies need to address.
Absolutely. And the research you sent over backs that up. There was a study that showed that employees who participated in workplace wellness programs that included mental health components reported lower levels of stress, anxiety, and depression.
That's right. And those improvements in mental health can have a ripple effect on other areas of an employee's life, including their work performance, their relationships, and their overall sense of well-being.
So it's not just about being happier at work, it's about being happier in life.
Exactly. And that's something that I think a lot of companies are starting to understand. They're realizing that investing in their employees' mental health is not only the right thing to do, it's also good for business.
Makes sense. Now, I'm curious, what are some of the specific ways companies are incorporating mental health into their wellness programs?
Well, it varies widely.
Okay.
Some companies are offering things like mindfulness workshops, yoga and meditation classes, or even access to on-site therapists or counselors.
Mm-hmm.
Others are focusing on creating a more supportive and inclusive work environment where employees feel comfortable talking about their mental health and seeking help when they need it.
That's really important. It's about creating a culture where mental health is destigmatized and employees feel supported.
Exactly. And one of the things that I found really interesting in the research you sent was this idea of psychological safety in the workplace.
Yes, there were a couple of articles that really dove into that. Can you explain what that means and why it's so important?
Absolutely. So, psychological safety refers to an environment where employees feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, taking risks, and even making mistakes without fear of negative consequences.
So it's about feeling safe to be yourself at work, even if you're not perfect.
Exactly. And research has shown that psychological safety is essential for creativity, innovation, and team performance.
Right.
When employees feel psychologically safe, they're more likely to share their ideas, collaborate effectively, and take on new challenges.
That makes a lot of sense. And it seems like workplace wellness programs can play a big role in creating that kind of environment.
Absolutely. By promoting open communication, fostering a sense of community, and providing resources for mental health support.
Yeah.
These programs can help to build a culture of psychological safety where employees feel valued, respected, and empowered.
It's interesting, when we first started talking about workplace wellness, I was picturing gyms and fitness classes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so much more than that, isn't it? It's about creating a holistic environment where employees feel supported and valued in all aspects of their lives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that employees are whole people with lives and interests outside of work.
Right.
And when companies invest in their employees' well-being, it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to workplace wellness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what are some of the key factors companies should consider when designing their programs?
That's a great question. I think the first step is to really understand the needs of your employees.
Okay.
What are their concerns? What are their interests? What kind of support would be most beneficial to them?
So it starts with listening to your employees.
Exactly. And then it's about being creative and flexible in your approach.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are tons of great resources and best practices out there. It's just a matter of finding what works best for your company and your culture.
And being willing to adapt and evolve as you go, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Workplace wellness is not a one-time initiative.
Right.
It's an ongoing process that requires constant attention and refinement.
Speaking of attention, one thing that came up a lot in the research you shared was the role of technology in workplace wellness.
Yeah.
It seems like there are a ton of apps and platforms out there designed to help employees track their fitness goals, manage stress, and connect with colleagues.
It's true. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in this space.
Mm.
And while there are definitely some concerns about privacy and data security,
Yeah.
there's also a lot of potential for technology to enhance and personalize the workplace wellness experience.
I can see that, for example, I use a meditation app that sends me reminders throughout the day to take a few minutes to breathe and de-stress.
Oh, nice.
It's really helpful, but I imagine it can be overwhelming to try to navigate all the different options out there.
It can be. That's why it's important for companies to be thoughtful and strategic in how they incorporate technology into their wellness programs.
Yeah.
It's not about throwing a bunch of apps at employees and hoping for the best.
Right.
It's about selecting tools that are relevant, user-friendly, and aligned with the company's overall wellness goals.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea of ROI.
Mm.
You mentioned that it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about the overall value gained.
Right.
But how can companies actually measure the ROI of their wellness programs? That seems like a tricky thing to quantify.
It can be, but there are a few ways companies can approach this.
Okay.
One is to track things like employee absenteeism, healthcare costs, and productivity metrics.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a decrease in sick days, a reduction in healthcare spending, or an increase in productivity after implementing a wellness program,
Right.
that's a pretty good indicator that it's having a positive impact.
Okay, so it's about looking for those tangible, measurable outcomes.
Exactly. But it's also important to consider the less tangible benefits,
Right.
like improved morale, increased engagement, and a stronger company culture.
Yeah.
These things can be harder to measure, but they can be just as valuable in the long run.
Absolutely. A happier, healthier workforce is a more productive workforce.
Precisely. And while it's not always easy to put a dollar value on those things, they can have a significant impact on the overall success of a company.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the benefits of workplace wellness, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there are some potential downsides or drawbacks as well.
That's true. As with any initiative, there are potential pitfalls to be aware of.
One concern I've heard is that these programs can sometimes feel intrusive or coercive. Like employees might feel pressured to participate even if they don't want to.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It's crucial for companies to be mindful of boundaries and respect individual choices.
Right.
These programs should be presented as opportunities, not obligations.
Exactly. It's about giving employees the freedom to opt in or opt out without fear of judgment or repercussions.
And it's important to be aware of the potential for unintended consequences. For example, if a company focuses too heavily on physical fitness, it could alienate employees who have disabilities or health conditions that prevent them from participating.
It's a good point. It's about being inclusive and making sure that the program is accessible to everyone, regardless of their abilities or limitations.
Absolutely. And it's also important to be mindful of the potential for data privacy issues.
Yeah.
With all the technology being used in these programs, it's crucial to ensure that employee data is being collected and used responsibly and ethically.
Those are all really important considerations. It seems like the key is to approach workplace wellness with a sense of balance and sensitivity.
I agree. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're supporting employees' well-being without overstepping boundaries or creating unintended negative consequences.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the research you shared highlighted this idea of creating a holistic approach to workplace wellness. Can you elaborate on what that means and why it's so important?
Of course, a holistic approach to workplace wellness recognizes that well-being is multifaceted. It's not just about physical health or mental health in isolation. It's about addressing all aspects of an employee's well-being, including their physical, mental, emotional, social, and even financial well-being.
So it's about taking a 360-degree view of the employee and creating a work environment that supports them on all levels.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that these different aspects of well-being are interconnected.
Okay.
For example, if an employee is struggling financially, it can impact their mental health, which can then affect their physical health and their work performance.
It's a domino effect.
Precisely. So a holistic approach to workplace wellness aims to address all of these interconnected factors to create a truly supportive and empowering work environment.
That's a powerful concept, and it seems like it requires a pretty significant shift in mindset for a lot of companies.
It does. It requires a move away from the traditional view of employees as just cogs in a machine and toward a more humanistic approach that recognizes the importance of their well-being.
And the value they bring to the organization.
Exactly. When employees feel valued and supported, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and loyal to their company.
That's something that all companies should strive for.
I agree. And I think the companies that are embracing this holistic approach to workplace wellness are the ones that are going to thrive in the long run.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to attract and retain top talent, foster a positive and supportive work culture, and ultimately achieve greater success.
Well said. Now, you shared a case study with me, the IT company in Denmark called Pico Publish.
Yeah.
And it seems like they've really embraced this idea of workplace wellness. But I'm curious to know if there are other companies out there that are doing this well. Are there any other examples or best practices that stand out to you from the research you did?
There are actually one company that really impressed me was a tech company in California called Mindful Motion. They've completely redesigned their workspace to prioritize employee well-being. They have standing desks, treadmill desks, yoga studios, meditation rooms, and even an on-site organic garden where employees can grow their own food.
Wow, that sounds incredible. It's like a wellness oasis.
It really is. And what's even more impressive is that they've seen a significant decrease in employee turnover since implementing these changes.
Oh, wow.
Employees are happier, healthier, and more engaged, and they're sticking around longer.
That's a testament to the power of creating a work environment that truly supports employee well-being.
Absolutely. And another company that's doing some really innovative things in this space is a financial services firm in New York called Balance and Thrive. They offer a comprehensive wellness program that includes everything from financial planning workshops to on-site childcare to pet-friendly offices.
Wow, that's really gone above and beyond.
They are. And what's interesting is that they found that these seemingly non-work-related benefits have actually had a positive impact on employee productivity and engagement.
That's fascinating. It really highlights the interconnectedness of all aspects of well-being.
Exactly, and it shows that companies that are willing to think outside the box and invest in their employees' well-being in a holistic way can reap significant rewards.
I know we've been focusing a lot on companies and organizations, but I'm curious, what about individuals? What can we do on a personal level to prioritize our well-being, even if our workplaces aren't as supportive as some of the examples we've been discussing?
That's a great question and a really important one. Even if your company doesn't have a formal wellness program,
Yeah.
there are still things you can do to take ownership of your well-being.
Like what?
Well, one of the most important things is to be proactive.
Yep.
Don't wait for your company to offer you a gym membership or a mindfulness class.
Right.
Take the initiative to find activities and resources that support your well-being.
So it's about being your own advocate.
Exactly, and it's about making small, sustainable changes that you can incorporate into your daily routine. Things like taking a few minutes to stretch or meditate each morning, going for a walk during your lunch break, or simply making time to connect with friends and family after work.
Those are all great ideas, and they're things that anyone can do regardless of their work environment.
Absolutely, and remember, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress, not perfection. Just making a small effort each day to prioritize your well-being can make a big difference in the long run.
And speaking of making a difference, I want to touch on something that came up in the materials you shared
Mm.
about the role of leadership in promoting workplace wellness.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like having buy-in from the top is crucial for these programs to be successful.
It absolutely is when leaders prioritize their own well-being and model healthy behaviors.
Hmm.
It sends a powerful message to the rest of the
It's
organization.
about walking the talk.
Exactly. And it's not just about talking the talk.
Right.
Leaders need to create a culture that supports well-being by providing resources, encouraging healthy habits, and recognizing and rewarding employees who prioritize their health.
So it's about creating a work environment where well-being is valued and supported at all levels of the organization.
Precisely. And when that happens, everyone benefits. Employees are happier, healthier, and more productive, and the company as a whole thrives.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground today, but there's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially after reading the research you shared. It's this idea that the traditional 9-to-5 workday might be becoming obsolete.
That's an interesting point. What makes you say that?
Well, with all this talk about flexibility, work-life integration, and prioritizing well-being,
Right.
it seems like the lines between work and life are becoming increasingly blurred.
I agree. And with the rise of remote work and technology that allows us to be connected 24/7,
Yeah.
the traditional boundaries of the workday are definitely being challenged.
So what does that mean for the future of work?
Mm.
Is the 9-to-5 workday a relic of the past?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's safe to say that the way we work is evolving rapidly, and I think that's a good thing.
In what way?
Well, it gives us the opportunity to create a more humane and sustainable way of working, one that prioritizes well-being, flexibility, and purpose.
I love that it's about designing a work life that works for us, not against us.
Exactly. And I think that's something that everyone can aspire to, regardless of their industry or job title.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to come back to you and what you're looking to get out of exploring this topic.
Yeah.
What are your key takeaways so far? And how do you see this information influencing your own approach to work and well-being?
That's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that workplace wellness is no longer just a nice-to-have perk.
Yeah.
It's a strategic imperative for any company that wants to attract and retain top talent, foster a positive and productive work culture, and achieve long-term success.
Right.
And on a personal level, I'm inspired to be more proactive about prioritizing my own well-being, both at work and in my personal life.
That's fantastic. And it seems like there's a real opportunity here to create a more humane and sustainable way of working, one that benefits both individuals and organizations.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're on the cusp of a major shift in how we think about work and well-being.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where this movement takes us in the years to come.
Me too. Now, before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. To ponder, if you could design your ideal healthy workplace, what would it look like? What kind of programs, policies, or practices would you prioritize?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that everyone should be asking themselves. After all, we spend a significant portion of our lives at work. Why not make it an environment that supports our well-being and helps us thrive?
Yeah, that's so true. It should be an environment that really supports us. I know, like, for me, it would involve a lot of natural light, maybe even some greenery indoors.
Oh, yeah.
Like, really?
I'm with you there. I think Creating a space that feels more connected to nature would be like a top priority for me too.
Yeah.
And maybe even incorporating elements of biophilic design,
Yeah.
using natural materials and patterns to create like a more calming and restorative environment.
Yes. I love that those little touches can make such a huge difference in how we feel. But beyond the physical space, what about like the less tangible aspects of a healthy workplace?
hmm For me, it's all about fostering a culture of trust and respect,
Right.
where people feel comfortable being themselves, sharing their ideas and asking for help when they need it. And that starts with leadership.
Yeah.
Leaders need to set the tone by modeling those behaviors themselves.
It goes back to that idea of psychological safety we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Creating a space where people feel safe to be vulnerable and take risks.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to have a sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
to feel like your work is meaningful and that you're contributing to something bigger than yourself.
So it's not just about being happy and healthy at work. It's about feeling like your work has like a positive impact on the world.
Precisely. And I think that's something that's becoming increasingly important to people, especially younger generations.
Yeah.
They want to work for companies that are aligned with their values
Yeah.
and that are making a difference in the world.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to you one last time. You sent over all this incredible material studies, articles, even personal anecdotes. What's the one thing you really want to hold on to from this deep dive? What's going to stick with you?
It's not just one thing. It's the overall shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Workplace wellness isn't just about perks or ticking boxes. It's about fundamentally rethinking how we work and live. It's about creating a future where our work supports our well-being instead of depleting it.
That's beautifully said. It's about creating a work life that nourishes us, not just drains us.
And that's something I think we can all aspire to. So as we leave you today, we want to leave you with that challenge to think about how you can create a healthier, more fulfilling work life for yourself, whether that's advocating for change within your company or simply making small changes to your own daily routine. Remember, even small steps can lead to big changes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.